All right. We are back in Luke 21. And if you remember, this is the prophecy of Christ regarding the judgment of Israel and the destruction of the temple in 70 AD and the warnings he's giving to his disciples. And if you remember, during that time, the disciples, they see the temple building. They're in awe of them. And he says, I tell you, not one stone will be left upon another. Absolute destruction. And then he gives them some warnings now to prepare for that. Because again, the question is, if this is what's coming, how do we get ready for that? And that's really the point of so many of the prophecies that foretell of cataclysmic events like this is how do we prepare for this? Do we repent? Do we stand firm and fight? Do we run? Do we flee? I mean, there are different answers. There are times when, like when the Assyrians came in and put Jerusalem under siege, if you remember in 722, the command of the day was not surrender, it was hold fast, don't despair. And God came in and wiped out the army and sent them away. But then in 586, the proper response was surrender, give up. You can't, this is the Lord. You must submit. And those that refused to were killed and destroyed when Nebuchadnezzar came in 586. So now he's foretelling of another destruction coming in 70 AD. And what's going to happen? What's the command for the believers? And
Flee,
what's that?
flee.
Flee. Yeah. So first thing is don't be led astray, if you remember. The first warning is don't be led astray by these false Christs, by again, those false military leaders that will come in. They're going to gain some victories. It's going to look good. They might even take a city. And they're going to claim now is the time, the kingdom is ours, and don't go after them. A lot of them will go after them, but Christians do not go after them. Um, and then he starts to give them the signs of what to expect. The first signs, if you remember, were sort of um, global signs, if you will, large scale signs of what's happening in the earth. There'll be rumors of wars and civil wars, earthquakes, famine, pestilences, signs in heaven, even fire and sulfur. By the way, it's interesting. I think it was, didn't Vesuvius explode and destroyed Pompeii? I think in 79 AD, not long after all these events, too. So a lot of crazy things happening during this time. And you'll be persecuted. So get ready for that. Um, your own family will turn against you. And now it comes to these are sort of the final sort of urgent sign. This is like the alarm is going off now that tell them now is the time to get out of there. And so let's read that. This is where we left off, verse 20 down to 24. Liz, would you read that for us?
Certainly. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation has come near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let those who are inside the city depart, and let not those who are out in the country enter it. For these are days of vengeance, to fulfill all that is written. Alas, for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants in those days. For there will be great distress upon the earth and wrath against his people. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be led captive among all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled.
Interesting. So it's interesting. This is Luke's passage here is really helpful because he's writing it again to Gentiles who don't understand all the Old Testament references. And he speaks very clearly about what to expect. But listen to the way that Matthew's gospel describes uh, the same scene here. He says, this is Matthew 24. Let me see if I can find it here. The abomination that causes desolation. He says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for the women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants, pray that it won't happen in the wintertime or on the Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation. Do you notice he says it's the exact same passage. He's given the exact same warning, but he says it differently. Matthew describes it as the abomination of desolation, which Luke interprets for us as what?
Being surrounded by armies.
Yes. The abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. That's from Matthew 24. Luke here says that that is Jerusalem surrounded by armies.
Strange because some people they make a parallel here to Daniel, and when Antiochus Epiphanes came in and
Yeah.
brought a pig in for worship and that kind of stuff, that it's
Yeah.
saying it's going to be something like that, an individual desecrating the place.
Yeah. But you can see here, Luke we know it's the same passage. It's the exact same passage as Matthew's. The instructions are the same. Flee to Judea when you see it. Pray that alas for those who are pregnant and nursing in those days. There's great distress coming. But he uses terms that are very clear to us. Because as a Gentile would have no idea what abomination of desolation in the holy place. I don't know what that even means. That's a reference to Daniel. But for the Gentiles, like I know what an army looks like surrounding the city. I know what that is. And so that's pretty clear to us here. And so that is the key reference point for Luke's gospel. He says also, it's in Matthew's gospel that he will say later on, in that day when this happens, one will be taken and one will be left behind. Remember that part? Two men will be working in the field, one will be taken and one will be left behind. And you'll notice Luke does not speak in those terms.
Right.
Rather, he gives sort of an interpretation of those terms. What does it mean to be taken, and what does it mean to be left behind? Well, in verse 24, what does it mean to be taken?
Led captive.
To be led captive.
Taken away.
Taken away as a slave. And what does it mean to be left behind?
Be killed.
Yeah, to fall by the edge of the sword. That's the thing. That's why those who take that passage and say it's a reference to the rapture, I'm like, you're not reading it properly here. We can discuss rapture on another day here, but this is not being taken is not a good thing. Where you're taken to heaven, you're taken away to captivity, and being left behind is just as bad or worse, probably. I mean, you're left for dead, but it might be better, it might be worse. I don't even know, but it's not something you want either of. So he says that the instructions are when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, what are your instructions when you see that happen?
Flee to the mountains.
Yes. Everyone in Judea should flee to the mountains and leave the city. Of course, the question is, how do you leave the city if it's surrounded by armies? We'll discuss that in a moment. And don't enter the city or out in the country. Don't enter it. And how does what is the meaning of all these days? What is this? These are what? Days of what?
Vengeance.
Days of vengeance. Question is, days of vengeance. We know it was the Roman army doing this. Is that what he means? This is the vengeance of the Romans?
Of God.
It's against the people who have rejected their Messiah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the vengeance of God.
The Romans are just the instrument for
Yes. Yeah. Avenging, in a sense, the death of his son. He's coming. They've rejected, they've despised and rejected. It was all part of God's plan, but it's also still evil what they did, and the kind of treatment. And he even, remember those parables? I think we read those parables where he says, he describes the kingdom of heaven, and the man goes on a long journey, and he sends his sons to collect from the vineyard. You remember? And he sends his own son. And what do they do to his own son when he sends it? They kill him, right? Because they think now we can inherit the vineyard. And the question is, what will he do? And he says he will cut them to pieces. He will come and then give the vineyard to others. This is a day of vengeance. There'll be great distress. And the warnings are, alas, this is a sad day, as alas, for whom especially?
Women with children and
pregnant women and nursing infants. Why call out those particular folks? I mean, it's kind of obvious, but what's the reason? Why is it especially bad for them?
They won't be able to get away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can't run fast. They'll be the first to be slaughtered. And the things that they do to women is just horrific in these times. We won't even discuss details of the way that they treat them.
It still happens today in the world.
Yeah. Those are one of the things like what the Japanese did, the rape of Nanking. If you remember that story in before World War II began, they went and they killed, I think, 10 million Chinese people, slaughtered them, and they would slice open the pregnant women. It was horrible, the kind of stuff that they did. So
I
alas for
just
them.
don't understand that kind of evil. It just blows my mind.
Yeah. It's I don't even understand it either. I think it's a frenzy. There is such a bitterness and a hatred that just consumes. It's horrifying.
Pack mentality too, Everybody else is doing
The stuff
it.
they did on October 7th when the Hamas invaded Israel and slaughtered 15. I just heard some stories of the atrocities that they committed in there. It wasn't just that they shot people dead, and the way that they raped and tortured the people was horrific.
Yeah.
But you dehumanize them. They become, they're not, especially in the Muslim world, it's like if you're not a Muslim, you're free to do whatever you want to these people. They are
Dogs.
they're dogs, yeah. By the way, those watching the World Cup, the Egyptian team that played the Argentina, did you see that game?
All right, I know the result, but
Yeah, so Egypt is a Muslim country. They don't allow Christians to play on their team. And
Right.
before the game, they show pictures of them praying in the locker room, and everyone's like, "Oh, isn't that great? Look how spiritual they are." But they don't talk about what they're saying in their prayers,
Mm,
and they're wishing judgment and destruction upon the Jews and the Christians, is what they're
yeah.
praying.
well,
And especially, and they really emphasize the Christians because they're playing against Christian nations. So they played
Yeah.
against Argentina, and they were on the road to winning that game. They're up 2-0 with just like 15 minutes to go in the game, and Argentina scored 3 goals in the last 15 minutes to win the game, and
Wow.
then Lionel Messi, almost to rub it in, probably because he believes it, he's a Catholic, but he does the sign of the cross after he scores his goal, and so that must have just like grated them to no end. But anyway,
Like that they say that they win when they pray to kill all the Christians. That's why they
But
do
the
it.
thing is, what people don't understand is that they're not a radical team.
No.
It's Islam that's radical. Those prayers are the prayers that Muslims pray every day.
Morocco is Islamic also, isn't it?
Yes.
Because they lost last night at Gillette, and there was massive riots among the Moroccans in England.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can see the brutality in these. It's a war. It's so tribal. It's so violent and inclined toward war, especially these young men. You don't understand it as a woman. You can never understand the kind of things that drive a young man, the kind of things that are raging in him, especially if he's frustrated, if he's been spurned or rejected. The kind of violence that young men are capable of is terrifying. And these are the kind of folks they're recruiting for these battles, for these wars, is exceedingly violent men. And so at the Romans' times, they came in and just slaughtered. According to the records, I believe it was when they finally sacked Jerusalem, it was 1.1 million dead. That's about a couple 100,000 taken into captivity. Was the final numbers there. Great distress. So I want to talk a little bit about this sign, Jerusalem surrounded by armies, and what that is a reference to. Because it's not a reference actually to the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Because you can't really obey these commands. How can you flee the city if it's surrounded by armies? It's not possible to do that. So what does that even mean? And so there is some history to this. This is the Jewish-Roman War. I don't know if you know much about it. Began in 66 AD to to 73 AD. Under the time of Nero. So Nero is emperor at this time, and the Jews take Jerusalem in 66 AD. They take possession of it. And they rise up again. This is these false Christ he's warning them about. And they take possession of it. Nero sends his general Vespasian and his son Titus to put Jerusalem under siege. And that was in 66 AD. And they come down and they wipe out all the things in the north there in Galilee, going down to Judea, and they put Jerusalem under siege around 66 AD. But what happens is, as you know, is that it doesn't last long. There's so much trouble in Rome under Nero's term. His kingdom, his rule is in real trouble. That in 68 is when he commits suicide. So actually, the Jews withstand the siege, and Rome retreats because of all the trouble in the empire under. And so when it's so tumultuous there that in 68 is when Nero dies. He commits suicide. In 69 AD, there are 4 emperors. This is the year of 4 emperors, each of them like assassinated after the other, until finally at the end of 69, Vespasian takes the throne. And Vespasian, as you can tell, he's got a grudge on Jerusalem. He wants to settle this once and for all. And so the siege is lifted. And it's that moment we have interpretations galore about what does this mean? How do the Jews interpret the lifting of the siege?
Some think they won, probably.
Yeah, the prophecy failed or something.
Well, no, they didn't know about the prophecy of Christ. These are the Jews.
Okay, right.
They're thinking, they're emboldened by this. They see that, yes, this is our time.
Victory.
Victory is ours. And so they're emboldened by this, and so they're thrilled. The Christians in the area are like, this is what Jesus warned us about. This is Jerusalem surrounded by armies. This is what we've been warned about. The desolation is near. It's not that they've retreated, is a mercy of God to give us time to escape. It is not victory. It's just a moment of peace that we can get out of here. Is not a victory. And so the Christians flee. This is, Eusebius refers to it as the flight to Pella, is when the Christians fled the region across the Jordan River to the east, and were spared the destruction that was coming upon the city. So Christ gives them those commands: get out of there when you see these things happening. And
so the army the army that had surrounded them had pulled back some, so they had room to get out of it.
So they had the army that had surrounded them was needed elsewhere. They had to leave. And so they left the region, and so went off. And so the Jews are free. They feel like God has delivered them, just like he delivered Hezekiah from the Assyrians, like he delivered his people many times before. And this is our time now. The kingdom is ours. And, you can feel these false Christs emboldened, and they feel like, yes, the kingdom is ours now. Mm-hmm. And so they don't flee. They double down there. They stay there. And they go on as if everything's fine and normal. So when the siege returns a couple years later in 70 AD, it's actually during the Passover time, I believe, when Jerusalem is swelled with people from all over the world, Jews from all over the world, who did not heed the warning, or didn't know the warning, or the Christians who understood the warning did not come to Jerusalem at that time, and so they were gone. They fled, and then the great distress comes. So the sieges. Vespasian sends Titus to restart the siege in 70 AD. And it's only a matter of months, I think, before they break through the walls, destroy everything. And it's a Holocaust beyond belief,
Mm.
all that happens.
So how long, like approximately how long did it take the Christians to realize when that first siege was over that they started to flee, like right away?
I don't
Like the
know.
Jews, I mean, we don't know, right? We weren't there, but
I know Eusebius is the one who kind of references it, and it just gives a reference to it. It doesn't get into all the details of all that transpired. But I imagine when these things happen, it's not simply like they have the scriptures. So they have the Gospel of Matthew, they've got the Gospel of Luke available to them, and the Gospel of Mark are all there, and they all speak of these days. They would have been, all those scriptures would have been well known to the churches at that time. And I'm sure that during that time, they also, if you remember, God had given them prophets during that first century who were foretelling things to come. Some had foretold of a famine that would come. Agabus, remember, and we're reading in Acts, foretold of what was going to happen to Paul. So I imagine that there were not just the scriptures, but prophets who were warning the people, we got to get out of here. This is what he means. We got to get out of here. And so, like a good shepherd, Jesus, through his word, is leading his people to safety so that they do not have to endure the wrath of God. So you kind of see that. When we went through Revelation, that was one of the big themes, is there's a big difference between wrath and tribulation. Here's your tribulation. You're going to be persecuted by the world. Some of you are going to die, are going to be martyred. And your own family's going to turn against you. But I have not abandoned you. You will not endure this, which is the wrath of God coming on judgment against his enemies. So you're going to endure tribulation and trouble, but you will not endure the wrath of God when he comes. So it's a fascinating time. And again, I encourage you to read Josephus and his account of these things, his firsthand account of all the wonders that were going on during this time. So this is in 70 AD. It's interesting too that the Roman war is 7 years, which kind of you feel that 7-year tribulation period we talk about, right? And even the splitting of it into 3.5 and the 3.5, the sack of Jerusalem happens right in the middle of it at the 3.5 point at 70 AD is when
cool.
Jerusalem is, and the war isn't really concluded until 73. I think the last stand is at Masada, if I'm not mistaken, when they commit suicide instead of having the Romans take them over. So it's an awful affair. It's an absolutely awful affair. And it is, as far as the Jewish people are concerned, there is nothing like it before or since. This changed their world. Everything changed at this point. They still cannot get over it. The Wailing Wall, everything comes back to this day.
I have a question for you. So Jerusalem falls. I'm assuming that means Israel is defeated, and we don't have Israel anymore until 1947, 48.
As an independent nation, correct. Yeah, I mean, so the Jews are still they continue to exist and to survive and even thrive in areas, and are sent. They're dispersed all over the world.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing thing that in 1948 that they are brought back to the land and allowed to set up their own independent nation, which is a remarkable thing. And I think that really is, as everything is God's plan. I think he has a purpose in the scriptures for the Jewish people. They are still, God has chosen the Jews for purposes. He's given us his word to them. When God becomes a man, he becomes a Jew to come to us, And
Yeah.
and that's why
It's amazing
Paul,
watching what's going on now in the world
yeah.
over there is like, oh,
And it's always been the case. I often wonder about that. I said, why, I was talking to my cousin about this the other day too. It's like, why? I mean, are the Jews the chosen people? Well, I mean, in one sense, yes, in one sense, no. I mean, they're not, by virtue of their blood, they're not, that doesn't save you. That doesn't make you God's people just because you're born a Jew. Um, it's faith in Christ. We are the children of Abraham, all who believe, Jews and Gentiles alike. However, there is something about this people that God has a specific plan for them, not a salvation plan necessarily, but he has a purpose for them in his overall plan of saving the world. He talks about that in, was it Romans? He says, they're a vine and an olive tree, and branches have been removed because of unbelief. You remember that? And we are those branches that have been grafted in because of belief. And he does give this sense of like, but how much more, if God can graft in wild branches, how much more can he graft back in the original branches? Bring them back in. So I feel like I personally believe that there will be sort of an awakening of the Jewish people once again to Christ.
I like the very last verse in Galatians 3. It says this, it says, and if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's descendants.
Yeah.
And heirs according to the promise.
Yeah.
If you have the faith of Abraham, if you are a believer in Christ, then you are his descendants.
Yeah.
That's huge for a Jew.
Yeah, I agree. So it all comes out of faith, and what that is going to look like, we just don't know. We just don't know. And I think, but when we look at these passages here, I hope it's clear that what Jesus is talking about are not things that we're looking forward to happening in our future. This is a reference to events that happened in that time that they needed to know. They needed specific instructions about what was going to happen in their lifetime to be ready for it. So when I apply this to ourselves, I would say the application is not to keep an eye on Jerusalem, and when you see it, surrounded by armies, to take a flight and go over to Judea and flee to the mountains in that region. That's not the application here. The application is look at how Christ cares for his people and spares them from the wrath of God.
I agree with you. I will say though that a lot of theologians would point out to any prophecy that often there's a near and a far fulfillment. The problem is we look at passages like this and we only see the far fulfillment and we miss the immediate context and what the near fulfillment was of this, which is what you're describing.
Yeah.
But there are no shortage of end times prophecies now that are looking at this passage and say, yeah, but the far side of this is you'll see something similar. Revelation 6 talks about signs and the suns in the heavens and things like that. And whatever.
Yeah, to which I'd say, look, maybe,
right,
but maybe not.
Right.
I don't feel like, I personally, I feel like you're a fool if you are looking for specific signs. You're a fool. When Jesus says, I can come at any moment, you just need to be ready that at any moment he can come. He doesn't need to give us a sign. Now he might recreate this whole scene once again.
Right.
But he's not required to. And I think we need to be ready. But I want to stress the point too, is that little phrase, when you see. That's important. To his disciples, he's not talking to us, he's talking to his disciples. When you, my disciples who are right in front of me right now, see these things happening, the judgment is near, the desolation of Jerusalem is near. And this is not an end of the world judgment. It's a judgment against a specific city, a specific people at a specific time, which we've seen throughout the Bible, where there's not just one day of the Lord, there are many days of the Lord, these judgment days when he comes. So
whenever someone started getting heavy into the end time prophecies and that, the thing that always came to me was that, you know what, you have to be ready because my end time might be I don't wake up tomorrow morning.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, given the course of history and the patience of God, yeah, it's more likely you're going to see him in heaven first before he comes to earth to see you.
Yeah.
But you never know. We need to be ready anyway. It's like,
Yep.
but again, I have I feel a little bit personal about this because this, the teaching of a lot of the teaching from the radio preachers who I really loved, it really led me to a place where I was convinced Christ is going to come and judge the world. We're going to have the apocalypse, before the year 2000. We're not going to make it to there. And it just, in my life, was so, every time I saw a red moon, I was like terrified. All these different signs and things. And anytime there's trouble in the Middle East, and you're just living in this constant state of anxiety and stress because of all the signs. And the fact is, all the signs that we're seeing today are signs we've been seeing for the last 2,000 years.
Mhm.
There's nothing new. I mean, when was the last time there wasn't trouble in the Middle East, right? When was the last time people weren't trying to kill all the Jews? It's like it's just constant. And again, it's going to happen, but when and how, we're not sure. But again, this that you see part of it, which he kind of lays into. And he describes about what will happen, the great distress and wrath against the people. And the wrath of God is going to look like what? Well, in verse 24, he describes the wrath of God at that day.
Yeah, they'll fall by the edge of the sword and led captive among all nations.
Yeah. Captivity, death, and the city will be trampled by the Gentiles until the times the Gentiles are fulfilled. Okay. The wrath of God in 70 AD was those killed by the sword, over 1 million, led captive, hundreds of thousands, and the city trampled by the Gentiles, the Romans. And there you go. All right.
You kind of wonder how were there any Pharisees and Sadducees left after that?
Yeah, I think I don't know how it's just resilient. I mean, but also keep in mind that the Jews at this day are still scattered around the world too.
Mm.
So this is a fierce judgment and destruction of Jerusalem, and it should, but God had sent them all over the world. So there were probably very few that survived this local chapter, but there were still many around the world, and there would have been Pharisees and Sadducees all over the world too. So like Paul. Remember, Paul's a Pharisee, and he's from Tarsus. He's from that area. So, all right, let's do our next section here. Bob Thomas, you want to get that for us? 25 to 28.
Sure. And there will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on the earth distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. People fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken, and then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with glory, with power and glory, great glory. Now, when these things begin to take place, straighten up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near.
Okay. So this is a big question, but it sounds like the second coming, doesn't it? It sounds like the end of the world, the way it's described here. However, and that's where you might say, yeah, it could be a reference also to the second coming. But I would argue that it's I think it fits with this time as well. As we get through this. So the first thing is at this time, he says there'll be signs where. Notice where all the signs are happening here.
In the sky.
Yeah, signs of the sun, moon, stars, the lights. He will tell them in Matthew, he will say the sun will go dark, the moon will not shed its light, the stars will fall. The lights go out at this time. And so there's and distress among the nations of nations at this time. Josephus, it's interesting in his account, describes some supernatural phenomenon that happened at this time. In his accounts, he says there's at one point there was in the middle of the night, like a light shining on the temple in the middle of the night. There was people reporting that they could hear armies marching in the clouds this time. That there were voices heard in the temple saying, "Let us depart this place." There's like supernatural signs that he records in his account of these things. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on. And it's interesting. There's the heavens and earth. And so you can see that this is, he takes us in this paragraph beyond what the things that we see here in the physical world. This is something spiritual as well. The powers of heaven are shaken here. If you remember when God creates, he creates the heavens and the earth, the seen and the unseen. And Jesus, if you recall, is the Lord of heaven and earth. He's given all authority. And in many times in the Gospels, you see that there's a spiritual battle happening. And it's not just let's go back even to the crucifixion of Christ. Who was responsible for the death of Jesus Christ? And we begin to lay the blame. Who was it?
The Jews.
We have the Jews, or the Jewish leaders, we should say.
The Jewish leaders, yeah.
Yeah, Pilate, Herod, they were all in on this, right? The Pharisees, the priests, Judas is there, right? All these things are happening. They're all behind it. But there's someone else behind the scene too. Who was it that inspired Judas?
Or Satan.
Devil.
Oh, yeah.
There are spiritual forces at work as well. It's not just that there is a judgment of the physical realm here. There's a judgment of the spiritual realm as well, the powers of heaven being shaken. And so Jesus even says, if you remember, I saw Satan fall like lightning when he's referencing to his time of the cross. And so there is it's not just a physical judgment, but a spiritual one. But what that looks like, it's hard to say because it's an unseen realm here. So that it's not just the earth, but it's heaven shaken as well. And you know that like the stars in the book of Revelation, what do they represent, the stars? Remember
the spiritual leaders of the seven churches.
Yeah, the angels, right? The stars are the angels and the devil, the dragon, even swipes a third of the stars from heaven, and you see this going on. So this is so much bigger than a political event. You can't explain this as, well, the Jews, refused to submit to the Romans, so the Romans came in and punished them and took them out. End of story. That's all it is. It's like, this is God's wrath and judgment against not only those who rejected his son, but against the demonic powers at work in that area. It's very much like the Exodus, if you remember. Remember what God says to Moses? That this is not, I will judge not just Pharaoh, but the gods of Egypt, he says specifically, are going to be under judgment as well. And even when Moses' first encounter with Pharaoh, that those priests show up and do their own little magic things, shows this is a bigger war than simply, Egyptians against Israelites. This is Yahweh, the Lord, the one true God, the Most High God, against the rebel powers that are behind the Egyptian throne.
I never understood the acknowledgement of little g gods.
Yeah.
I just, were they demonic? Did they have powers? Did, people are praying to them, they're sacrificing to them. Was this just demonic? Oh, I've always thought there isn't any other God but God, and this is just stuff people
Yeah.
made up. But
Well, the thing is that the scriptures talk very openly about gods. In fact,
Right.
God is even called the God of gods,
right,
right? He's the most high God. The Lord sits in the council of the gods. And so who are these gods? And so it's like you have to understand the way that the Bible uses the term God. Small g God, or the word God is really, it's a reference to anything that is of the spiritual realm, is in the realm of the gods, is considered. Even strangely enough, even when the witch of Endor calls up Samuel from the grave, she says, I see a God. Because she means by that, we would say a spirit.
yeah,
Or an angel. So angels are gods, spirits are gods. So God is as a term, is used as a reference to that which is spiritual, that which is the unseen. God, the capital G that we talk about, he is the creator, the eternal creator. All those other gods are created beings.
yeah,
They are spiritual beings. So because of the confusion, we shy away from the word God, because we don't want people to think we're polytheists and we're like the pagans. But it's funny because the pagans' understanding is not that far off from our own. Because the pagans don't believe that their gods are eternal. They don't believe that their gods are creators. They're also created. Um, and I said the difference between us and the pagans is that we don't worship them. That's the difference. Anything that's created, we do not worship, no matter how glorious or powerful it is. And that's why when God says, you shall have no other gods before me, you're not to bow down to any images like that. He's not saying that those gods do not exist. They do.
right,
They're just creatures. They're not to be worshipped. And the faithful ones, the faithful angels, when someone tries to worship them, will say, don't worship me.
right,
I'm a fellow servant.
yeah,
The unfaithful ones, the rebellious ones, will gladly receive your worship. And they really are, they are real powers behind the throne. These are the authorities and the dominions that Paul talks about in Ephesians 6. The
yeah,
powers. Yeah. I hope that's clear. This is a tough topic because, um, it's the terminology that throws us off, because we don't use that term gods the way the Bible does. And yeah. So I hope that makes it.
thank you.
So
That's good.
the hard part for me on this one, to not bring it towards the end times, is 27, where it says, and then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with the power and great glory.
Yes. They will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud
Yeah.
with power and great glory. The question is,
Right.
what does it mean that the Son of Man's coming in a cloud? And what does it mean that they will see him?
When they're seeing this wrath of the Romans, which is God's instrument,
Yeah.
and so they're in a sense seeing the Son of Man show up, acting through the Romans in judgment. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. So to see something does not mean to literally see it with your eyes. It doesn't have to mean that. To see is to experience. We talk about that too. You will see the day, when this happens or when that happens. You may not see it actually happen, but you will be alive when
Right.
it does. So that's the idea, is to see is to experience this day that's coming. And the Son of Man coming in a cloud, what does that phrase mean? Does it mean he's going to be riding a cloud, surfing his way down to us? Is that what that means? What does it mean for the Lord to come in a cloud?
You'll not physically see him, I assume, but it's him.
What is the meaning of a cloud in the Bible? What's the cloud really portray?
God's power, his presence,
His presence, his power, his judgment.
kind of like being led by a pillar of fire or a pillar of cloud.
Yeah, think of thunder clouds, if you will. Don't think of little puffy clouds. that he's going to fly down on. He's coming in, and even the whole idea of coming in a cloud, it's like this wrath is coming from above. This is not the wrath of the Romans. This is the wrath of God, the Son of Man. If you remember, in Daniel 7, I saw one like a son of man ascending on a cloud, being presented before the Ancient of Days. He's coming on the clouds. This is his coming in judgment, coming in wrath upon them. So he's taking, what I really believe is happening here is that he's taking this physical description of what they're literally going to see and giving them sort of an interpretation of what it really means, which is this is judgment from on high. This is the wrath of God against the whole world and the heavenly powers against him. This is a day of judgment coming. The Son of Man is coming with power and glory. His first order of business to avenge what they did to him.
Okay, that makes a little more, because when it says they will see, who was they? It's the people that he just talked about 2 lines before that. Yeah.
Yes, they is not you will see.
Yeah.
You will not see the Lord coming in power of great glory. They will see it. That's a great observation. They will see. They, the rebellious, will see. You will not see this. You will not experience this. They will see this.
You want to correct up above, you have the instead of they.
They
We'll see.
Oh, the beginning. There you go.
Thank you. They, the rebel, will see this day of wrath. What are they to do when these things happen? What's their instructions? When all this takes place, what are you to do?
Go stand outside and look up for your salvation approaches.
What does it mean to straighten up and raise your head?
Look back to God.
Praise God.
Yeah, this is a day of hope for you. It's a day of despair for your enemies. This is a day of hope for you. Your redemption is near, is drawing near. So this is a day you're going to be. They have been under persecution. Remember, during this time in the 60s, was brutal persecution of the Christians. You remember
Christians.
this, right?
Yeah.
The Christians were tormented during this time. Nero crucifying them and lighting his garments with them, feeding them to the animals, just hunting them down. The Jews also, their own people, constantly. And you can imagine that once the Jews take over the city, that they have the Christians are in some big trouble here. So it's like they are been hiding out. Yeah, this is the catacombs. These are just days of terror for them when they have to go into hiding. And in a sense, what he's saying is this is a day of redemption. You're straighten up. You can come out, if you will. This is a real turning point. And there will be days of peace for the church after this. There'll be further persecutions coming later on. But after this, there'll be sort of reprieve for you, a redemption. This, I think you can take this and you can certainly apply it to what's coming for the world as well. There is days of judgment coming, and we don't have to be afraid of them. The judgment of the world is our redemption, just like it was in Egypt. The judgment of Egypt was the redemption of Israel, brought out of slavery. The judgment of this Jerusalem is going to be the redemption of the Christians as well.
Those who have the opposite viewpoint, premillennial things, they have an answer for these verses.
Sure.
And usually to defend against it, you have to go back in the context somehow. Yeah. But, it says, this generation shall not pass away without seeing these things. And you say, aha, see, it's referring to those people that were, no, they'll say that this generation is the generation that is in existence at the time of these things, looking down the road. So they have an answer for them.
And that just, to me, that makes it kind of pointless at this point. If you're saying, what's the point of this urgent? I mean, you can feel the urgency in this, can't you?
Sure. Yep.
And he's telling them, he keeps speaking to them, you, right?
Right.
And then, I meant it's not going to happen for another 3,000 years. It's like, dude, that's not close. That's not soon.
Right.
Even like Daniel's revelation, it wasn't going to happen for a good 500 years. And so Daniel is told to shut it up. Don't
Right.
reveal it. It's not for you. Don't worry about it, Daniel. It's
Sure.
for another generation. You don't get a sense at all that Jesus is saying, but don't worry about it. It's not for you. This is for another generation.
Right. No, they may agree with you that
Yeah.
yes, there's a near side of this. The 70 AD is the immediate context, and they'll agree. They're just gonna battle you on the far side of this.
And that, again, you'll notice that's where that 32 is sort of the interpretation. I think that's key to the interpretation of it all. Heaven and earth will not pass away until all has taken, this generation will not pass away until all has taken place.
Mhm.
That, I feel, is really the interpretive key to this whole section.
Right.
Yes.
But again, they'll say they're going to say in the far side, that's the generation that is existing at the time.
Yeah, it's a stretch. Yeah, I don't, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just saying that we shouldn't, if you can present this very, good interpretation of the 70 AD viewpoint, but they'll have an answer.
Yeah.
You think you got them cornered and you don't. They're going to.
But if that was true, then this would happen again and again and again after every generation.
Yeah.
Because every generation will eventually pass, but it has to happen before that generation passes.
Yeah.
No. They're saying that when Christ returns for the end times judgment, that generation that existence at that time will see these things. That's what they're saying.
It's tough, and this is why R.C. Sproul had that series on the last days according to Jesus, because he says a lot of skeptics, a lot of atheists and skeptics were using this chapter and saying Jesus is clearly a false prophet because he said this generation will not pass away, and referencing his coming, and he didn't come, did he? So he's a liar and he's a false prophet, and so therefore your faith is stupid. And you have to reject him. And he says that's a real criticism. And they have a point because he gives a timeline. And if you interpret this as his second coming of what we're still waiting for, you have to say that he was incorrect. The one thing he says is that this generation, I think it's obvious because he's used this generation many times. And it's always referring to the people who were alive that he was talking to at that time. And they passed away and it didn't happen the way that you said it would. And so that's where he says, look, we have to look back at this and say, what did he really mean? And he gives a compelling case that all the things that he mentions here did happen at that time. It just didn't happen the way that we said it had to happen, where Jesus comes in and sets up his kingdom on earth and does all the second coming things that he will do.
Right.
So any case, we'll break it here. Good discussion.
That was good.
That was very good.